The ultimatum. The vast observation deck of the Terran Alliance flagship Defiance offered an unobstructed view of Earth, a blue jewel suspended in the endless void of space. Captain Maya Chen stood with her hands clasped behind her back, her expression unreadable as she observed her homeworld. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her shoulders like a physical force. Billions of lives depended on the decisions made in the next few hours. Behind her, the door to the observation deck slid open with a soft hiss. Commander Eli Reeves entered, his usually confident stride now hesitant. Maya didn't need to turn around to know the news wasn't good. They've issued their final terms, Eli said, his voice tight with controlled anger. The Hegemony Council will not budge. Maya closed her eyes briefly before turning to face her second-in-command. Let's hear it then. Eli activated his holopad, and the harsh, mechanical voice of the Hegemony's primary translator filled the room. Their demands were explicit. Earth was to surrender 30% of its resources annually, dismantle 70% of its defense fleet, and submit to Hegemony oversight of all technological advancement. In return, humanity would be granted protected species status within the Hegemony's vast interstellar empire. When the message ended, the silence in the observation deck was absolute. They call this mercy, Maya finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. They call this protection. It's subjugation, Eli replied, his knuckles white around the holopad. Plain and simple. The Hegemony had appeared in Earth's solar system 18 months ago, a coalition of 7 advanced alien species who claimed to have ruled the galaxy for millennia. Their technology was centuries beyond humanity's, their fleet numbers overwhelming. Their first contact message had been polite but firm. Earth would join the Hegemony or face consequences. What had followed was a grueling series of negotiations, with the Hegemony's demands growing increasingly oppressive. They viewed humans as primitive, unpredictable, and potentially dangerous, a species to be controlled rather than welcomed as equals. How long do we have to respond? Maya asked. 24 hours, Eli answered. After that, they've threatened to place a blockade around Earth. No ships in or out. They'll assist us in dismantling our orbital defenses. Maya nodded, her mind racing through options that seemed increasingly limited. The Terran Alliance's military might was significant by human standards, but against the Hegemony, they were hopelessly outmatched. A direct military confrontation would be suicide. Call the War Council, she said, making her decision, and get me Director Quan from Research Division. I want to know if his team has made any progress. 3 hours later, Maya stood in the secure conference room of the Defiance, facing the 12 men and women who comprised humanity's War Council. The mood was grim as Maya outlined the Hegemony's final demands. So that's it then, General Santiago said, his weathered face lined with fatigue. We either submit or face extinction. Those aren't our only options, Maya countered. She nodded to a thin, nervous-looking man seated at the far end of the table. Director Quan has something to share. Director Wei Quan stood, adjusting his glasses with a slightly trembling hand. For the past 6 months, my team has been studying the Hegemony's communication systems. We've discovered something unusual. The holographic display in the center of the conference table activated, showing complex waveform patterns. The Hegemony species communicate through standard electromagnetic transmissions, similar to our own systems. However, they operate exclusively within a narrow frequency band. It's efficient, but, he paused, a hint of excitement breaking through his nervous demeanor. It leaves them completely blind to other frequencies. The implications hung in the air for a moment before Admiral Hassan leaned forward. Are you saying they can't detect communications outside their frequency range? Precisely. Quan nodded. We've been running tests. We can transmit on frequencies they don't monitor, can't detect, and likely can't even perceive. It's like they're colorblind to certain parts of the spectrum and don't even know those colors exist. The room stirred with the first glimmer of hope they'd felt in months. How does this help us? Someone asked. We're still outgunned. Maya stepped forward again. It helps us because the hegemony isn't just a military force. It's a coalition that maintains control through information superiority. Their ships, their stations, their entire empire relies on constant communication. We can talk without them listening, Eli said, understanding dawning on his face. We can do more than talk, Maya replied. Director Kwan's team has developed transmitters that can send data packets through these unmonitored frequencies. Data packets that can interface with hegemony systems. You're talking about hacking them, General Santiago said, his eyebrows raised. I'm talking about giving ourselves a fighting chance, Maya corrected. The hegemony wants to treat us like primitives. Fine. Let them underestimate us. Their arrogance will be their downfall. For the next several hours, the War Council debated strategy. Direct military confrontation was still out of the question, but asymmetrical warfare, using their newly discovered advantage to disrupt hegemony operations and gather intelligence, might buy them time to build up their defenses and find more weaknesses to exploit. As the meeting concluded, Maya found herself back at the observation deck, staring at Earth. The plan they had formulated was risky. There was no guarantee it would work, and if it failed, the consequences would be severe. But the alternative, submission to the hegemony's terms, was unacceptable. Captain, Ila's voice came from behind her. The response has been drafted. The official channels will transmit our rejection of their terms in 23 hours. And the unofficial channels? Maya asked. Director Kwan's team is ready. The moment we send our official response, the first wave of infiltration packets will be deployed to the 3 hegemony outposts within our reach. If all goes well, we'll have access to their systems before they even realize we've declined their generous offer. Maya nodded, her expression resolute. Humanity didn't come this far to become someone else's subject species. We've faced extinction-level threats before: disease, climate change, our own violent nature. We survived because we adapted, because we never stopped fighting for our right to exist on our own terms. The hegemony thinks this is a simple calculation, she continued. That faced with superior technology and numbers, we'll make the logical choice to submit. They don't understand what it means to be human. They don't understand that some things are worth fighting for, even against impossible odds. Eli smiled grimly. Then I guess we'll have to teach them. Yes, Maya agreed, her gaze returning to the blue planet below. They've crossed a line. They've threatened our home, our future, our very identity as a species. Now they'll learn what happens when you back humans into a corner. The silent revolt was about to begin. The hegemony had no idea what was coming. As the deadline approached, tension aboard the Defiance reached a breaking point. Officers moved through the corridors with purpose, their faces masks of determination hiding the fear beneath. Everyone knew what was at stake. Maya stood on the bridge, watching the main display where the imposing silhouette of the hegemony flagship loomed. Compared to the sleek, almost organic design of the alien vessel, the Defiance seemed crude and primitive. But appearances could be deceiving. "Transmission ready, Captain," the communications officer reported. Maya nodded. On screen, the face that appeared belonged to Archonvex, the hegemony's appointed overseer for the Sol system. His species, the Dravidi, resembled humanoid reptiles with iridescent scales and eyes that seemed to contain galaxies. Captain Chen. Vex's translator converted his sibilant speech to English. "I trust you bring the acceptance of your species to our generous terms." Maya met his gaze without flinching. "I bring humanity's response, Archon. We have carefully considered the hegemony's proposal and find it unacceptable. Earth will not surrender its sovereignty, its resources, or its right to determine its own future." The alien's expression didn't change. Maya wasn't even sure if Dravidi faces were capable of showing emotion, but the temperature of his voice dropped noticeably. "This is unfortunate. Your species has made a grave miscalculation. The consequences will be severe." "Perhaps," Maya acknowledged. but they are our consequences to bear. Humanity chooses freedom, even at a cost. Freedom. Vex's translator somehow managed to convey derision. What use is freedom to an extinct species? Make no mistake, Captain. Without the hegemony's protection, that is the path you have chosen. We'll take our chances, Maya replied evenly. This discussion is over. Chen out. As the screen went dark, Maya gave a subtle nod to Eli, who activated his comlink. Execute Operation Phantom, he said quietly. Throughout the ship, specially designed transmitters activated, sending invisible signals on frequencies the hegemony couldn't detect. Similar transmitters on Earth and the lunar colonies joined the effort, creating a web of communication that was completely invisible to their adversaries. First wave deployed. Director Kwan's voice came through Maya's earpiece. Infiltration packages are away. Now we wait. The hegemony's response was swift and predictable. Within hours, their ships moved into blockade formation around Earth. Smaller vessels took up position around key human outposts on the Moon and Mars. The message was clear. No one in, no one out. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, the communications officer reported, telling Earth's population that the blockade is temporary pending reconsideration of their offer. They're trying to turn public opinion against the alliance. Let them try, Maya said. Meanwhile, what's our status, Director? Kwan's voice was tense but excited. We're in. The infiltration packages have successfully penetrated the systems on all 3 target outposts. We're gathering data now. The first phase of their desperate gambit had worked. While the hegemony focused on their display of military might, humanity had already begun its counterattack, silent, invisible, and potentially devastating. Over the next several days, a curious stalemate developed. The hegemony maintained their blockade, occasionally tightening restrictions to demonstrate their control. They clearly expected Earth's resistance to crumble quickly under pressure. But behind the scenes, Director Kwan's team was making remarkable progress. The infiltration packages had given them access to an unprecedented wealth of information. Hegemony ship movements, communication protocols, and most importantly, technical specifications for their advanced systems. It's remarkable, Kwan told Maya during one of their secure briefings. Their technology is advanced, but their security is complacent. They've been the dominant power for so long that they've grown careless. They never expected anyone to access their systems through frequencies they can't even perceive. How soon can we move to Phase 2? Maya asked. Another 48 hours, Kwan replied. We need to ensure our control of their systems is absolute before we attempt to manipulate them. The planned second phase was even more audacious than the first, not just monitoring hegemony systems, but actively controlling them, creating false data and commands that would throw their operations into chaos. As Maya left the briefing, Eli fell into step beside her. The crew's getting restless, he said quietly. Sitting here while Earth is blockaded doesn't sit well. I know, Maya acknowledged. But this is a different kind of battle. Patience is our ally now. The hegemony's patience might run out first, Eli warned. Intelligence suggests they're preparing to make an example of one of our outposts, probably the research station on Ganymede. Show of force to break our resolve. Maya's expression hardened. Then we accelerate our timeline. Tell Kwan he has 24 hours, not 48. If the hegemony wants to teach us a lesson, we'll beat them to it. That night, as most of the crew slept, Maya stood alone in her quarters, staring at a small holograph of Earth. The weight of her decisions pressed down on her more heavily than ever. If their plan failed, the consequences would be catastrophic. But the alternative, submission, was unthinkable. Humanity had fought too hard, come too far to surrender now. The hegemony had crossed a line when they threatened Earth's future, and Maya was determined to show them why that was a mistake. You wanted to be awakened when we were ready, Captain. Ila's voice came through the comm system. Maya straightened, setting aside her doubts. On my way. When she reached the bridge, the atmosphere was electric with tension. Director Kwon looked simultaneously terrified and exhilarated as he turned to face her. "We're ready," he said simply. Maya nodded, taking her place in the command chair. "Begin Operation Phantom, Phase 2. Across the Sol system, hidden transmitters activated simultaneously, sending carefully crafted command packages to hegemony vessels. For a long moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, chaos erupted. Hegemony ships throughout the blockade suddenly lost power, their systems overridden by commands they couldn't detect or counter. Emergency lights flickered across their hulls as backup systems engaged, only to be compromised in turn. On the main display, Maya watched as the blockade formation disintegrated, ships drifting out of position as their navigation systems failed. Even the massive hegemony flagship wasn't spared, its imposing silhouette now dark against the stars, emergency systems the only signs of life. "It worked," Kwon whispered, disbelief and awe in his voice. "It actually worked." "For now," Maya cautioned. "They'll recover eventually. This is just the opening move." But it was a powerful opening move. In a single stroke, humanity had demonstrated that the hegemony wasn't invincible. The psychological impact would be as significant as the tactical advantage they'd gained. "Open a channel to the hegemony flagship," Maya ordered. "Let's see if Archon Vex is in a more reasonable mood now." The screen remained dark for several minutes before finally flickering to life. Archon Vex appeared, his usually immaculate appearance now disheveled, the background of his command center lit only by emergency lighting. "What have you done?" The translator couldn't quite capture the mixture of rage and disbelief in his voice. Maya allowed herself a small smile. "We've demonstrated that humanity isn't as primitive as you believed. This is just a taste of what we're capable of, Archon. The blockade ends now, or next time. We won't just disable your ships, we'll take control of them completely." This is impossible," Vex hissed. "Our systems are beyond your comprehension." "Evidently not," Maya replied. "The hegemony has ruled through fear and technological superiority for too long. You've forgotten that true advancement comes from adaptation, from being challenged. Humanity thrives on challenges." She leaned forward, her voice hardening. "Here are our terms. The hegemony will withdraw from the Sol system immediately. Earth will be recognized as sovereign territory, off-limits to hegemony interference. In return, we won't share our methods with other species under your control. You threaten the stability of the entire galaxy," Vex said, his composure cracking. "No," Maya countered. "We threaten the hegemony's monopoly on power. There's a difference." For a long moment, Vex was silent, his alien eyes unreadable. Then, with what might have been resignation, he spoke again. "The Hegemony Council must be consulted. This situation is unprecedented. You have 6 hours," Maya told him. "After that, we demonstrate Phase 3 of our capabilities." There was no Phase 3, not yet anyway, but Vex didn't need to know that. As the communication ended, the bridge of the Defiance erupted in cheers. It wasn't victory, not quite, but it was hope, something many had begun to think was lost forever. Maya allowed the celebration for a moment before raising her hand for silence. "This isn't over," she cautioned. "The hegemony won't surrender their power easily. Be ready for anything." But in her heart, she knew a corner had been turned. Humanity had proven its worth not through brute force, but through ingenuity and determination. They had found a weakness where none seemed to exist, had turned seeming disadvantage into advantage. The hegemony had crossed a line when they threatened Earth. Now they were learning what countless adversaries throughout human history had discovered. When backed into a corner, humanity doesn't just fight back. It changes the rules of engagement entirely. The silent revolt had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. The reckoning. 5 hours and 43 minutes after Maya Chen's ultimatum, the hegemony's response arrived. It wasn't what anyone aboard the Defiance had expected. "They're powering up weapons across the entire fleet," the tactical officer reported, her voice tight with alarm. "Multiple targeting systems are locking onto Earth's defense platforms." Maya's hands gripped the arms of her command chair. It seems Arch and Vex decided not to wait for the Hegemony Council's decision. "Or this is their decision," Eli suggested grimly. The main display showed hegemony vessels throughout the system reactivating their systems, shaking off the effects of humanity's cyber assault far more quickly than anticipated. They had adapted, implementing countermeasures that isolated critical systems from external influence. "Director Quan," Maya called over the comm. "Tell me we still have options." Quan's voice was strained. "They compartmentalized their networks. Our previous access points are being sealed off. We're trying to establish new ones, but it will take time. Time we don't have." On the tactical display, red warning indicators flashed as hegemony weapons platforms charged. Their message was clear: surrender immediately, or face devastation. Maya had known this was a possibility. The hegemony had ruled the galaxy for millennia through a combination of technological superiority and the willingness to make examples of those who defied them. That Earth had managed to embarrass them, so publicly only made swift, overwhelming retaliation more likely. But Maya had also prepared for this moment. "Execute contingency Prometheus," she ordered, her voice steady despite the gravity of the command. Throughout the Sol system, hidden transmitters once again activated, but this time they weren't sending infiltration packages to hegemony systems. Instead, they'd broadcast a complex series of instructions to human vessels and defense platforms, instructions that had been prepared in secret over the past several days. "Prometheus is live," Eli confirmed. "All the Alliance vessels report ready." "What is the hegemony doing?" Maya asked, her gaze fixed on the main display. "They're continuing to power up weapons," the tactical officer reported. "First salvos expected in approximately 3 minutes." Maya nodded, her expression resolute. "Open a channel to Arch and Vex. One last chance for diplomacy." When Vex's face appeared on screen, there was no trace of his earlier discomposure. His alien features were set in what Maya had come to recognize as the Dravidi equivalent of cold fury. "Your tricks have only delayed the inevitable, Captain Chen," he said without preamble. "The hegemony will not be defied. Surrender now, and perhaps your species will be permitted to survive under proper supervision." "Look around you, Arkin," Maya replied calmly. "While you've been preparing your attack, we haven't been idle." At her signal, the tactical display shifted to a wide view of the Sol system. Throughout the blockade formation, small devices were activating, devices that had been quietly positioned over the past several days by stealth drones too small for hegemony sensors to detect. "Those are proximity mines," Maya explained. "Each one calibrated specifically to your ship's shield frequencies, information we gathered during our first incursion into your systems. They're currently in passive mode, but at my command, they'll activate. Your fleet will be crippled in seconds." It was a bluff, but a carefully calculated one. The devices were real enough. Humanity had indeed managed to deploy thousands of small, stealthy platforms throughout the blockade formation. But they weren't mines. They were advanced sensor packages designed to gather data on hegemony shield systems for future weapon development. However, the hegemony had no way to know that without launching a full sensor sweep, which would take time they clearly didn't think they had. Vex's expression remained unchanged, but there was a momentary flicker in his gaze. Uncertainty, perhaps, or reassessment. "You're bluffing," he said finally. "Your technology isn't capable of this. Just as our technology wasn't capable of penetrating your communication systems," Maya countered. "You've underestimated humanity from the beginning, Archon. That's a mistake you continue to make at your peril." For a long, tense moment, neither side spoke. On the tactical display, the countdown to the hegemony's weapon discharge continued. 2 minutes, 30 seconds. "Even if what you claim is true," Vex said eventually, "you cannot hope to defeat the entire hegemony. We have ruled the galaxy for 15,000 years. We have faced and overcome countless rebellions and challenges to our authority. Perhaps, Maya acknowledged, but you've never faced humanity before. We don't want to rule the galaxy, Archon. We simply want our place in it, on our terms, not yours. 2 minutes, 15 seconds. The hegemony defines the terms, Vex insisted, but there was a new note in his voice, one that might have been doubt. Not anymore, Maya replied firmly. Not for Earth. You have a choice now, Archon. You can withdraw your forces and report to your council that Earth requires a different approach, one based on mutual respect and cooperation rather than subjugation. Or you can fire and discover whether or not I'm bluffing about those minds. 1 minute, 50 seconds. And be aware, she added, that even if you somehow neutralize our current defenses, humanity will not surrender. We will fight you with everything we have, for as long as it takes. You may destroy our cities, our orbital platforms, even whole continents, but as long as a single human survives, the fight will continue. Is that really a commitment of resources the hegemony wants to make? For one planet, one species. The logic was impeccable, and Maya could see it working on Vex. The hegemony maintained its control through efficiency as much as fear. A protracted conflict with a species as numerous and tenacious as humanity would drain resources that could be better employed elsewhere. 1 minute, 30 seconds. Stand down your weapons, Archon, Maya said quietly. Let's find a better way forward. The silence stretched, the only sound on the bridge of the Defiance the soft peeping of the countdown. 1 minute, 15 seconds. Then, almost imperceptibly, Vex nodded. Weapons are standing down, he said, the words clearly difficult for him. I will consult with the Hegemony Council regarding your proposal. Relief swept through the bridge, though Maya was careful not to let it show on her face. A wise decision, Archon. We'll maintain our current positions while you consult with your superiors. As the communication ended, Maya allowed herself a small sigh of relief. The immediate crisis had been averted, but she harbored no illusions that the conflict was over. Keep all systems at combat readiness, she ordered, and get me a secure line to Earth Alliance Command. They need to know what's happened and prepare for the possibility that the hegemony decides to call our bluff. Do you think they will? Eli asked quietly as the bridge crew carried out her orders. It's 50-50, Maya admitted. Our demonstration with their communication systems rattled them, but the hegemony has built its empire on the principle that defiance cannot be tolerated. They may decide that making an example of Earth is worth the cost. The next 48 hours were the most tense in human history. Throughout the Sol system, military forces remained on high alert, civilian populations were moved to shelters, and every available resource was directed towards strengthening defenses. Meanwhile, Maya and her team worked tirelessly to exploit the temporary advantage they'd gained. Director Kwan's researchers analyzed the data gathered from hegemony systems, looking for weaknesses they could exploit if diplomatic efforts failed. Engineers across Earth and its colonies worked to adapt their findings into practical applications, weapons, shields, and countermeasures that might give humanity a fighting chance. Maya slept little during this time, dividing her hours between strategy sessions, diplomatic communications, and brief moments of solitude where she could gather her thoughts. The fate of her species rested, in part, on her ability to navigate these treacherous waters. It was during one such moment of solitude, staring out at the stars from her quarters, that the call came. Captain, Eli's voice held a note of urgency. The hegemony fleet is moving. Within minutes, Maya was on the bridge, watching as hegemony vessels throughout the system began to reposition. But contrary to their fears, the ships weren't forming attack patterns. They were withdrawing, creating a clear corridor between Earth and open space. We're receiving a transmission from the hegemony flagship, the communications officer reported. When Archon Vex appeared on screen, his demeanor had changed subtly. The arrogance was still there, but tempered now with something that might almost be respect. The Hegemony Council has considered Earth's position, he began formally. In light of recent developments, the Council has decided to extend a unique offer to humanity. Maya listened carefully as Vex outlined the new proposal. The blockade would end. Earth would not be required to submit to hegemony authority in the traditional sense. Instead, a diplomatic mission would be established, with representatives from both sides working to forge a relationship based on mutual benefit rather than dominance and submission. It wasn't perfect. The hegemony still clearly viewed itself as the senior partner in the arrangement, but it was a far cry from their original demands. Most importantly, it recognized Earth's right to sovereignty, to determine its own future. The Council wishes me to convey that this arrangement is unprecedented, Vex concluded, making no attempt to hide his personal disapproval. No other species has been granted such consideration in the hegemony's history. Earth appreciates the Council's wisdom, Maya replied diplomatically. We look forward to establishing a productive relationship with the hegemony, as equals. The slight emphasis on the last word was deliberate, a reminder that humanity would accept nothing less. Vex's expression tightened momentarily, but he gave a curt nod before ending the transmission. As the screen went dark, the bridge crew of the Defiance exchanged glances of cautious optimism. They had achieved what had seemed impossible just days before, forced the mighty hegemony to compromise. It's not over, Maya cautioned, reading their expressions. The hegemony hasn't ruled for 15 millennia by accepting defeat gracefully. They'll be looking for ways to reassert control, to bring Earth into the fold by subtler means. But we've bought time, Eli pointed out. Time to strengthen our defenses, to develop our understanding of their technology, to prepare for whatever comes next. Maya nodded, allowing herself a small smile. Yes, we've bought time. And for humanity, that's often been enough. In the months that followed, the relationship between Earth and the hegemony evolved cautiously. The diplomatic mission was established, with representatives from both sides engaging in careful negotiations. Information was exchanged, selectively on both sides, and trade routes were established. Throughout it all, humanity continued to prepare. The insights gained from their brief incursion into hegemony systems were developed into new technologies, new defenses, new ways of ensuring that Earth would never again be at the mercy of an alien power. And across the galaxy, word spread of the small, seemingly primitive planet that had defied the mighty hegemony. And other subjugated species began to watch Earth with new interest, wondering if perhaps the hegemony's grip wasn't as absolute as they had believed. Maya Chen found herself at the center of these historic changes, a role she accepted with the same quiet determination that had characterized her command during the crisis. She knew that the peace they had achieved was fragile, that the hegemony's acceptance of Earth's independence was reluctant at best. But she also knew that humanity had proven itself on the galactic stage. They had shown that ingenuity, adaptability, and sheer stubborn refusal to submit could overcome even the most overwhelming odds. The hegemony had crossed a line when they threatened Earth's future, when they attempted to dictate the terms of humanity's existence. They had learned, as countless adversaries throughout human history had learned, that such threats only strengthened humanity's resolve. In pushing humanity to the brink, the hegemony had inadvertently revealed a fundamental truth, that the true strength of any species lies not in their weapons or their technology, but in their spirit, their willingness to stand together against impossible odds, to fight for their freedom, their future, their very identity. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy, a reminder that true greatness comes not from domination, but from the courage to define one's own destiny, no matter the cost. As Maya stood on the observation deck of the Defiance, watching Earth rotate slowly below, she felt a profound sense of pride. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and emerged stronger, more united, more determined to forge its own path among the stars. The hegemony had crossed a line. Humanity had pushed back, and the galaxy would never be the same.